I walked into Helen's living room, carrying the blanket I'd spent 3 months making. The stitches were small and even, the pattern a careful recreation of the one my own grandmother had taught me when I was 8 years old. 62 years of muscle memory had gone into every loop, every pull of the yarn. I'd chosen colours that reminded me of Helen when she was small, soft blues and yellows, the shades of her childhood bedroom that Richard and I had painted together the week before she was born. "Grandma?" My granddaughter Emma looked up from her phone, 16 years old. Still willing to acknowledge my existence at least, I held out the blanket. Emma took it, unfolding it halfway before her mother. My daughter glanced over from the kitchen island where she was slicing vegetables with the precision of someone who'd rather be doing anything else. "Oh," Helen said, "that's sweet, Mum, sweet." I watched my son-in-law Brad look up from his laptop. He worked from home now, which apparently meant working from Helen's kitchen counter while she made dinner. The laptop came everywhere, even to family gatherings that weren't gatherings so much as obligations he attended while simultaneously being somewhere else. "What'd Grandma bring?" Brad asked, not looking. "A blanket," Emma said, examining it with the kind of polite interest reserved for things you'd never use. "It's really nice, Grandma. Did you make this?" "I did. 3 months, 87 hours. I'd counted the way I counted most things now. Time had become something I measured carefully, aware of how much remained, how much I'd already given away. Brad glanced over, saw the blanket, returned to his screen. "That's a lot of work," he said, still typing. "You know, Margaret, you could have just sent money, saved yourself the trouble." The words hung in the air, the way certain words do. Not loud, not cruel exactly, just casual, dismissive, the kind of thoughtless comment that reveals what someone actually thinks, stripped of the pretense they usually maintain. Helen laughed. A small laugh, uncomfortable, but a laugh nonetheless. "Brad," she said, the way she always did, chiding without correcting, acknowledging the rudeness while accepting it. Emma had already set the blanket down on the arm of the couch. I looked at it there. 3 months of my time, my attention, my hands that ached now in ways they hadn't 5 years ago. The pattern I'd learned from a woman who'd been dead for 40 years, but whose voice I could still hear when I worked the yarn. "Tension matters, Margaret. Too tight and it pulls, too loose and it falls apart." I'd made that blanket with careful tension, perfect tension, and it was already being forgotten, discarded, reduced to something I could have replaced with a check. I reached into my purse, found the envelope I'd prepared 3 weeks ago, back when I'd still believed this moment would go differently, back when I'd still believed my presence here meant something beyond obligation and expectation. The envelope was empty. I'd taken the check out this morning, standing in my kitchen, looking at the amount I'd written. 500, the amount I gave them every birthday, every Christmas, every time they mentioned an unexpected expense or a bill that came due, or a thing they wanted but couldn't quite afford. And I'd thought, not this time. I handed the empty envelope to Brad. "There," I said, "saved you the trouble." He took it, confused, opening it before I could stop him. Not that I wanted to stop him, I wanted him to open it, wanted him to see nothing. "Mum?" Helen's voice had changed, sharper now, alert. I picked up my purse. "Thank you for having me," I said, the words automatic, the muscle memory of politeness I'd developed over 7 decades of being a woman who said please and thank you. And I'm sorry even when she wasn't. I walked to the door. "Wait," Helen said. "Mum, what?" But I was already outside, pulling the door closed behind me, hearing the click of the latch that sounded, for the first time in years, like something final. At home, I sat at my kitchen table. The house was quiet in the way it had been quiet for 8 years, since Richard died and left me alone with rooms that still smelled like him if I paid attention. Old Spice and coffee, the ghost of a man who'd been kinder than I'd deserved, who'd never once suggested I send money instead of myself. I opened my laptop. The spreadsheet was already there, the one I'd started maintaining 4 years ago. After Helen had called, asking for help with Emma's orthodontia, and I'd said yes without thinking, the way I always said yes, and then sat afterward trying to remember if I'd helped with the same thing last year. I had. $23,000 over 2 decades. Not counting the smaller amounts, the 100 here, the 50 there, the kindest of business app one, the arm in scroll instead and a little pointing, and some bit offereder. The endless stream of "Mum, could you?" and "I hate to ask, but," and "we're a little short this month." I scrolled through the entries, each one dated, categorized, documented with the precision of someone who'd spent 30 years working in accounting before retiring to a life I'd thought would be simpler. Emergency car repairs, $2,400. Down payment assistance, $5,000. Wedding costs, their second ceremony, the real one after the courthouse, $3,200. Emma's private school tuition, 3 semesters, $8,100, and on and on. The laptop screen glowed in the dark kitchen. I hadn't turned on the lights, didn't need them. I could see the numbers clearly enough, could see the pattern I'd been avoiding for years. Every time they called, I gave. Every time they asked, I said yes. Every time they needed, I provided. And not once, not in $23,000 worth of help, had they said thank you in a way that suggested they saw me as anything more than a resource, a bank account with a pulse, a problem solver who existed to smooth over the rough patches in their lives while they made jokes about how I could have just sent money. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from something else, something that felt like relief mixed with terror, the feeling you get when you finally say out loud the thing you've been thinking in silence for years. I was tired, so tired. Tired of being needed only when they needed something. Tired of being loved conditionally in proportion to what I could provide. Tired of shrinking myself into the convenient shape of Grandma and Mom and Margaret, who always helps, while the actual Margaret, the woman who liked crossword puzzles and historical novels and had opinions about things that had nothing to do with anyone else's emergencies, disappeared. I closed the laptop. Tomorrow I would make calls. Tonight I would sit in the quiet and let myself feel what I'd been too afraid to feel for years, that I had given too much for too long to people who had learned to take without seeing. The next morning I called the bank at 9 o'clock. First National, this is Jordan speaking. How may I help you today? Young voice, cheerful. The kind of cheerfulness that comes from not yet understanding that most calls to banks aren't made from a place of joy. I need to cancel automatic transfers from my account, I said. Silence. Then, of course, ma'am. Can I have your account number? I read it off the card I'd retrieved from my wallet, the same wallet that still held photos of Helen and Emma from years ago, back when they smiled at cameras without checking their phones first. And which transfers would you like to cancel? All of them. Another pause, longer this time. All of them, Jordan repeated, uncertainty creeping into that cheerful voice. Ma'am, I'm showing 3 recurring transfers from your savings to an external account. Are you sure you want to cancel all 3? I'm sure. Okay. And can I ask why? For security purposes. Because my son-in-law suggested I just send money. Because $23,000 bought me nothing but expectations. Because I'm tired of being an ATM with a heartbeat. They're no longer necessary, I said. I understand. I'll cancel those for you right now. Is there anything else I can help you with today? There was. I need to revoke power of attorney on my accounts. The typing stopped. That's a different department, ma'am. Let me transfer you to our estate planning services. Hold music. Soft jazz. The kind that makes waiting feel both interminable and somehow meaningless, as if time itself has been reduced to saxophone and synthetic drums. Estate planning, this is Brenda. Older voice, firmer. Someone who'd heard stranger requests than mine. I explained what I needed. I'll need you to come in person for that, Brenda said. We can't revoke power of attorney over the phone. Too much liability. When can you come in? Today. Today. Not a question, an acknowledgement. We have an opening at 2 o'clock. I'll be there. The bank branch was the same one I'd used for 36 years. Same beige walls, same potted plants that never quite looked real despite being watered weekly by someone whose job was apparently to maintain the illusion of life in a place designed around the movement of money. Brenda was waiting for me at a desk near the back. 50-something, grey hair cut short, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. "Mrs. Elliot," she said, standing to shake my hand. Firm grip, direct eye contact. I liked her immediately. "Thank you for seeing me on short notice." "Of course. Please, sit." I sat. She pulled a folder from her desk drawer, already prepared. Inside were forms printed on paper that felt heavier than regular paper, as if the weight of legal documents required physical substance to match their importance. "Your daughter Helen currently has power of attorney on your checking, savings and investment accounts," Brenda said, reading from the screen in front of her. "Has since 2019, is that correct?" "Yes." "And you want to revoke that authorization?" "Yes." She studied me for a moment, not judging, assessing. "May I ask why?" I could have lied, could have said something vague about updating my estate planning, about wanting to simplify things, about any of the acceptable reasons people give for making decisions that are nobody's business but their own. Instead, I said, "Because I don't trust her anymore." Brenda nodded slowly, clicked her pen, started filling out the first form. "I'll need your signature here, here, and here," she said, turning the paper toward me and pointing with one precise finger at each blank line. "This revokes all existing power of attorney authorizations effective immediately. Once you sign, your daughter will no longer have access to make financial decisions on your behalf." I signed 3 times, once in blue ink, twice in black, my handwriting still steady despite the fact that my hands were shaking again, not from fear, from relief. "Done," Brenda said, stamping the forms with a heavy metal stamp that made a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. "Final. Complete." She handed me a copy. "Is there anything else you need today, Mrs. Elliot?" "No, thank you." She walked me to the door of her office, paused. "My mother did something similar last year," she said quietly. "My brother, not me, but my brother, he was, well," she waited too long, didn't trust herself. "I'm glad you're not waiting." I looked at her. She looked back. 2 women who understood something that didn't need to be said aloud. At home I made tea, real tea, loose leaf, the kind Richard used to bring me from the specialty shop downtown before his heart gave out in the middle of Costco, in front of the rotisserie chickens. The most mundane death imaginable for a man who deserved something better. The kettle whistled. I poured, watched the steam rise. On the counter I noticed an envelope I'd missed this morning, small. My name written in careful, looping handwriting that belonged to someone still learning cursive. I opened it. "Dear Grandma, thank you for the blanket. I put it on my bed and it's actually really soft, and I like the colours. Mum said you made it yourself, which is really cool because I don't know anyone who can do that. I'm sorry Dad was rude yesterday. He doesn't really think before he talks sometimes. Love, Emma." I read it twice, set it on the counter next to my tea. Didn't respond. Not yet, maybe not ever. Because responding meant engaging, and engaging meant opening a door I'd just spent considerable effort closing. Emma was 16, old enough to understand actions had consequences, old enough to see what her parents were doing and choose eventually whether to repeat it. But she'd noticed, she'd seen. That was something. I folded the note carefully and placed it in the drawer where I kept things I wasn't ready to throw away but couldn't quite bear to look at. Old birthday cards, photos of Richard, the bracelet my mother had given me before she died. The drawer of beautiful, painful things. The tea was hot enough to burn my tongue, but I drank it anyway, welcoming the sharpness, the reminder that I could still feel things intensely, that I wasn't numb, just done. Done giving, done shrinking, done pretending the invisibility was accidental instead of cultivated through years of saying yes when I meant no, of providing when I wanted to protect, of loving people who had learned to confuse me with the things I could do for them. My phone buzzed. Helen. I looked at the screen. Didn't answer. It rang 4 more times over the next hour. Each time I let it ring. 3 days passed. The phone calls stopped after the first day. Helen had tried 14 times. 14. I'd counted them the way I counted everything now, with the precision of someone who'd learned that numbers didn't lie the way people did. On the 4th day, she left a voicemail. I listened to it once, deleted it. Not out of anger, but because I already knew what it said. The mortgage payment hadn't gone through. Brad wanted to know what was happening. They were worried about me. Could I please call back? Worried about me. As if cutting off the money supply meant I'd lost my mind instead of found it. Francis Wright's law office was in a building downtown that had been renovated 3 times since Richard and I first visited to draft our wills in 1989. The lobby had marble floors now, expensive-looking plants. A receptionist who looked like she could have been modelling instead of answering phones. Mrs. Elliot, she said, smiling with teeth so white they seemed professionally maintained. Mr. Wright is ready for you. Francis stood when I entered his office. 72 years old, still practicing. Still wearing suits that fit properly and ties that matched. Margaret, he shook my hand. It's been too long, 4 years. Has it? He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Please, sit. Tell me what I can do for you. I sat, smoothed my skirt. Realised I'd dressed for this the way women my age always dressed for important appointments, as if presentation could make us more credible, more worthy of being taken seriously. I want to change my will, I said. Francis pulled a legal pad from his drawer, found a pen, clicked it once. All right. What changes are we making? Everything to Benjamin, my grandson. Not Emma, she's too young still, but Benjamin is 24, responsible, studying engineering. He calls me every week and actually talks, not just asks for things, Francis wrote, and the rest. Split between the animal shelter and the public library. Nothing to Helen, nothing to Helen. His pen paused. He looked up. Margaret, I have to ask, are you sure about this? Disinheriting a child, especially an only child, that's a decision that can't be undone easily. There could be challenges, contested probate. Are you prepared for that? I am. He studied my face the way Brenda at the bank had studied it, looking for cracks in my certainty. He wouldn't find any. Then I'll draft the changes, he said, but I want you to think about it for a week before you sign. Make sure this is what you want. It's what I want. Even so, a week. Then come back, and if you still feel the same, we'll execute the documents. I nodded. He set down his pen, leaned back in his chair. Off the record, he said, as someone who's known you for 35 years. Are you all right? Was I? I thought about that question. Really thought about it. I'm better than I've been in a long time, I said. He smiled. Small, sad. Richard would be proud of you. The words hit harder than I'd expected. I felt my throat tighten, blinked quickly. Thank you, I managed. There's one more thing. Francis opened a drawer in his desk, pulled out a sealed envelope. Richard asked me to give you this if you ever came in without him. He left it here when we updated your wills after his diagnosis. Said you'd know when to read it. I took the envelope, felt the weight of it. My name on the front in Richard's handwriting, shaky. Those last few months when the cancer was winning and his hands couldn't hold pens the way they used to. Thank you, I said again. I didn't open the letter in the car, didn't open it at home either. Instead, I set it on my kitchen table and stared at it while I made dinner. Chicken breast, roasted vegetables. The meal for one that I'd been eating variations of for 8 years. Portioned and practical and profoundly lonely. After dinner, after the dishes were washed and put away, after I'd run out of reasons to delay, I opened it. My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're in Francis's office without me. That means you're making changes. Good. You always waited too long to put yourself first. I know what you're doing. I know why. And I want you to know that you're right. Helen learned early that asking was easier than earning. We let her. We made her that way by always saying yes, by smoothing over every rough patch, by being so available that she never had to become resourceful. That's on us. On me too. But you don't owe her your whole life. You don't owe her peace or happiness or dignity. Those are yours to keep. I should have been stronger when I was alive. Should have told you to stop giving so much. But I loved you and you loved our daughter, and I didn't want to be the one who made you choose. Now you're choosing anyway. I'm glad. Be strong, be selfish, be the Margaret I fell in love with when we were 22, and you told me you didn't need anyone but chose me anyway. All my love, Richard. I folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope, set it next to Emma's thank you note in the drawer of beautiful, painful things. Then I sat at my kitchen table and cried. Not from sadness, from recognition. Richard had seen, had known, had understood and loved me enough to not say it aloud until now, until I was finally ready to hear it. I cried for 10 minutes, maybe 15. Then I stopped, made tea, sat in the silence that had become, over the past week, less oppressive and more like space, room to breathe, room to exist without being needed. The house settled around me, creaking floorboards, humming refrigerator, the sound of a life that was small, yes, but mine. Only mine. Lorraine came by on Saturday afternoon carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the expression of someone who'd heard things and wanted confirmation. "Helen called me," she said, stepping into my kitchen without waiting for an invitation. We'd been friends for 43 years. Invitations had become optional somewhere around year 5. Of course she did. She wanted to know if you were acting strange. Lorraine set the wine on the counter, started opening drawers looking for a corkscrew with the familiarity of someone who'd been in this kitchen as often as their own. "I told her you seemed perfectly sane to me, did you?" "I did." She found the corkscrew, started working on the bottle. Then I asked her what she meant by strange, and she said you'd stopped answering calls and cut off their money. I said that sounded less like strange and more like overdue. The cork came out with a soft pop. Lorraine poured 2 glasses, handed me one. "So," she said, "tell me everything." I did. She listened the way good friends listen, without interrupting, without offering solutions I hadn't asked for, without trying to smooth it over or suggest there must be some misunderstanding. She simply listened. When I finished, she raised her glass. "About damn time," she said. We drank to that. "You know what's going to happen," Lorraine said after a moment. "She's going to show up here, probably with Brad. They'll want to talk, want explanations." "I know. You ready for that?" Was I? I thought about Richard's letter, about the spreadsheet, about $23,000 and 3 months spent on a blanket that had been dismissed with a joke. "Yes," I said. "Good." Lorraine set down her glass. "Because you deserve better than being someone's emergency fund. You deserve to be seen." Benjamin came by on Sunday morning. I saw his car pull up and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Uncomplicated happiness. No dread. No calculation about what he might want. Just gladness that he was here. He knocked. Waited. I opened the door. "Hey, Grandma," he said, smiling that crooked smile that reminded me so much of Richard that sometimes had to look away. "Got time for coffee?" Always. We sat at the kitchen table, same table where I'd cried over his grandfather's letter 2 days ago. Same table where I'd reviewed the spreadsheet. Same table where I'd eaten 8 years' worth of dinners alone. But it felt different with Benjamin there. Less like a monument to solitude, and more like simply furniture. "Mum called me," he said, after a few minutes of comfortable silence. "I expected she would. She wanted me to talk to you, find out what's going on, why you're shutting everyone out." He made air quotes around her words, his expression making clear what he thought of that characterization. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her I'd visit you and see how you were doing. That's not the same as finding out why." "No," he agreed, "it's not." He drank his coffee, set down the cup. "Want to know what I think?" he asked. "Yes, I think you're finally done being taken for granted, and I think it's about time." I looked at him, really looked. 24 years old, Richard's eyes, my stubbornness. "You're not angry with me?" "Angry?" He shook his head. "Grandma, I've watched them do this my whole life. Ask you for money, ask you to babysit, ask you to help with this or that. And you always said yes, always, even when I could see it wearing you down." "You saw that?" "Of course I saw it. I'm not blind." He leaned forward. "Look, I love my mom, but she's used to getting her way. Used to you making things easier. And Dad takes the path of least resistance in everything, including parenting, including being a decent son-in-law." "Emma sent me a thank you note," I said, "for the blanket. She told me she feels bad about what Dad said. She should." "Yeah, she should." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm moving out, actually. Got an apartment near campus. Needed some space from them." I understood. "Your mother doesn't know yet?" "Not yet. I'm telling her next week." He smiled, rueful. "She's going to lose it. I'm supposed to stay home and save money for a house, be practical. But I can't." He trailed off, started again. "I can't keep watching her treat you like an ATM and pretend it's normal." My throat tightened. "Benjamin, I mean it, Grandma. What you're doing, setting boundaries, saying no, that's not mean, that's not cruel, it's just treating yourself like you matter. Which you do. You always have." He reached across the table, took my hand. "I'm proud of you," he said. 4 words, simple words, but they meant everything. We finished our coffee, talked about his classes, his apartment, his plans for the future that didn't involve living in his parents' house and absorbing their learned helplessness. When he left, he hugged me tight. "Call me if you need anything," he said. "Anything. Okay? Okay." I watched him drive away, stood in my doorway feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Hopeful. Not about Helen. I wasn't naive enough to think she'd understand or accept this, but about the fact that I'd raised a daughter who'd raised a son who could see clearly, who valued people over convenience, who understood that love without respect was just another kind of using. That was something. That was enough. They came on Wednesday afternoon. I was in the garden when I heard the car door slam. Then another, 2 doors, both of them. I stood slowly, my knees protesting the movement in the way knees do when you're 72 and have spent an hour kneeling in dirt. Brushed the soil from my hands, turned. Helen was walking up the path with Brad 2 steps behind her. Her face was set in an expression I recognized, determined righteousness. The face of someone who'd decided they were owed explanations. "Mum," she said, not a greeting, an accusation, Helen. "We need to talk." "No, we don't." That stopped her. She'd expected me to invite them in, expected me to sit them down, offer coffee, perform the rituals of hospitality while they explained why I was wrong. I stayed where I was, in my garden, on my property. In the space I'd chosen. "What is going on with you?" Helen's voice rose slightly. Not quite yelling. Not yet. "You cut off our money. You won't answer calls. Benjamin said you went to a lawyer. Benjamin shouldn't have told you that. He's worried about you. We all are you?" I said it flatly, not a question. Brad stepped forward. "Margaret, look. I think we got off on the wrong foot. What I said about the blanket, I was joking. You know that, right? It was just a joke. It wasn't funny. It wasn't meant to." He stopped, recalibrated. "Look, whatever this is, can we talk about it inside? Like adults? We can talk about it here." Here, Helen looked around at the garden, at the tomato plants I'd staked last week, at the herb bed I'd weeded this morning. "You want to have this conversation in your backyard?" "I want to have it on my porch, actually, where you can hear me clearly and then leave." I walked past them, up the 3 steps to the porch, where I'd sat hundreds of evenings with Richard, drinking iced tea and watching the sun set. I didn't invite them to sit. Helen followed. Brad stayed on the lawn. "Mum, I don't understand what's happening. The mortgage payment didn't go through. Our car insurance, Emma's tuition payment. You just stopped, without warning, without even talking to us." "I stopped giving you money," I said. "That's what happened." "But why?" "Because I'm tired of being valued for what I provide instead of who I am." Helen stared at me. "That's not... We don't you?" I kept my voice level, measured. "When was the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for something, not because you needed help. Just to see how I was doing?" Silence. "I can tell you," I continued, "it was 3 years ago, March. You called to tell me about Emma's acceptance to that private school. You were excited, happy. You wanted to share something good, and then you asked if I could help with tuition. And the conversation changed, became about what I could do for you. That's not fair, isn't it? $23,000 over 20 years, Helen. I kept track. every payment, every emergency, every time you called and I said yes because I was your mother and that's what mothers do. Except you stopped seeing me as your mother somewhere along the way, started seeing me as a solution. Brad spoke up from the lawn. We appreciate everything you've done, Margaret. We really do. But you can't just pull the rug out from under us. We have obligations, bills. We planned around that help. And whose fault is that? He blinked. You're adults, I said. You have jobs, income, a house. You chose to build a life that required my subsidy. That's your decision, not my responsibility. So you're just cutting us off after everything? Helen's voice cracked. What are we supposed to do? What everyone does, figure it out. This isn't like you. Helen shook her head. This is cruel. This is self-respect, I interrupted. This is me deciding that I matter, that my time and money and energy are mine to keep if I choose, and I choose because of a stupid joke? Because Dad made one comment about because you laughed, I said quietly. Because you stood there and let your husband reduce 3 months of my work to an inconvenience. I could have replaced with a cheque. Because you've done it for years, all of you, treated me like I'm invisible, except when you need something. Helen's face crumpled. That's not true, isn't it? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I love you, she said finally. You're my mother. Of course I love you. I know you do, in your way, when it's convenient, when I'm useful. I took a breath. But I need more than that. I deserve more than that, and I'm done pretending I don't. So that's it, Brad asked. You're just done with us. I'm done being used. If you want a relationship that isn't built on what I can give you, we can talk about that. But not today. Not until you understand why I'm doing this. When, then? Helen's eyes were wet now. I don't know. Mum, go home, Helen. She stared at me, waiting for me to break. To soften, to say I didn't mean it, that of course I'd help, that we could work this out right now if they'd just come inside. I didn't. After a long moment, she turned, walked back to the car. Brad followed. They didn't say goodbye. I watched them drive away, their car disappearing around the corner, and felt the weight of what I'd done settle over me. Not regret. Something else. Freedom. The letter came 2 days later, 4 pages, handwritten. Helen's furious cursive, filling every line with accusations and justifications, telling me I was selfish, that I didn't understand how hard things were for them, that family was supposed to help each other. I read it once. Then I sat down and wrote my response on a single index card. I understand you're angry. I'm not trying to punish you. I'm trying to remember who I am. When you're ready to see me as a person instead of a resource, we can talk. Until then, I wish you well. Mum. I mailed it that afternoon. Didn't wait, didn't second guess. The days found their rhythm. I woke when I wanted, made breakfast without rushing, spent mornings in the garden, afternoons reading, evenings working on a quilt I'd started for myself. Rich purples and deep blues, colours I liked instead of colours I thought other people would prefer. The house was quiet, but it wasn't lonely anymore. It was mine. I changed the locks, not because I thought Helen would try to come in, but because I wanted the tangible proof that this space belonged to me. New keys, new deadbolt. The locksmith, a woman in her 40s who made small talk about her own boundary-setting journey with her mother, handed me the keys with a knowing smile. "Fresh start," she said. "Yes," I agreed. I rearranged furniture, hung pictures I'd kept in storage, put out the china Richard had given me on our 30th anniversary, the set I'd never used because it seemed too nice for every day. Everything was every day now, every moment mine to choose. Benjamin called on Sundays. Sometimes Emma texted short messages that suggested she was thinking about things, figuring out her own relationship to loyalty and love and what family should mean. Helen didn't call. I didn't expect her to. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That was all right. One morning, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. 72 years old, grey hair I'd stopped dyeing, lines around my eyes, hands that ached in the cold. But the face looking back at me was different somehow, calmer, more present. I smiled at myself. The woman in the mirror smiled back. Home, I thought. I'm home. Not the house. Me. I was finally home in myself. If you're reading this and you recognize yourself, the one who always gives, who always says yes, who's become so useful that you've disappeared, I want you to know something. Your silence isn't kindness, it's abandonment of yourself. Your no isn't cruelty, it's remembering you're a person, not a function. And it's never too late, not at 72, not at 82, not ever. You deserve to be seen, to be valued, to take up space in your own life. Start small if you need to, one boundary, one refusal, one moment of choosing yourself. The guilt will come, let it. The anger, theirs, not yours, will come too, let it. And then, after the noise fades, you'll hear something you might have forgotten existed. Silence. Your silence. The space where you get to decide what comes next. That's where freedom lives. That's where I live now. And the door is locked. By choice. By design. By me.